Today I'm going to demonstrate to you how to make a very simple plant-based bake. Now the original recipe for this had a lot of dairy in it, but of course what we're doing here is we are substituting plant-based foods for what we formerly used in terms of dairy products and meat. Okay, so this is called potato bake, and I haven't got my recipe in front of me, but maybe if someone can just throw me one of theirs. Thank you. Just to make sure I do what I told you I did. Alright, that's obviously not the right one for that. Okay, so what we're starting with here is an ordinary casserole dish, and I've said 7 medium potatoes. In here I've got exactly 7. Right, but the way that you can figure this out is you just place them in your dish, and if the dish is basically full, that's how many potatoes you need. Okay, so don't slavishly follow the 7, just use as many as you need to fill the dish. And what we're going to do is we're going to slice these. In fact, the best way is cut it in half first, and then slice them about roughly ½ centimetre thick, and then I'm going to put it in water which I've got boiling on the stove already. Now you'll notice that I've got these potatoes peeled. Potatoes store most of their nutrients just underneath the skin of the potato. Okay, and so you might think, well, Tim's cut off all the nutritious part of the potato. Why did he do that? Well, the reason is that these potatoes weren't grown in my garden. They were bought from a shop. And while the potato stores its nutrients just under the skin, it also stores if it absorbs any bad things from the soil, that also gets stored just under the skin as well. So I've cut that off today, and you might choose to do that if you use potatoes purchased from a shop. Now the other thing that I should tell you is that you can also use sweet potato for this. I know a lot of the people in the islands will use sweet potato for a lot of their dishes. Just going to get this one going. And while I've got these potatoes starting to boil, I'm going to put a little bit of oil in here. And I'm just going to get these onions, which I've pre-chopped, and I'm going to get those frying here. Probably got quite a few onions there. I'm not sure if I need all of that. I can just keep going there. Let's see what we've got. High. Is up high? Now there's many different kinds of potatoes that you can use. As I've said, you can use sweet potato. I've chosen to use agria because they are a nice dry potato. I don't know if people in the Wairarapa are into their potatoes, but down in Southland, where I lived for 13 years, potatoes are everything. Okay, and they like to eat new potatoes because their seasons are such that you only get really new potatoes for a very short period of time. So there's lots of different varieties of potatoes. You can even get some of the Murray potatoes, which are purple in colour, and that adds a really nice variation to your recipe because you've got the white potato, and then you've got little sprinklings of the Maori purple potatoes and what have you throughout it, and it just makes it look nice. And of course the way that it looks has a lot to do with how people think it tastes. Okay, so as you can see, this is a very simple thing to do. As long as you can not chop your finger off, you can make this dish. Just getting those boiling, hopefully. You notice I cut it in half first. For those of you who have not done this before, you don't want to cut something that's rolling around. Yeah, you take your finger off very easily that way. So you put it on the flat surface and you cut it that way, about, as I said, ½ centimetre thick. Now guys, if you're asked to make dinner one night this is something that is really simple to make. Okay, so far all you've had to know how to do is peel some potatoes and chop them up, peel an onion and chop it up, and then get it frying on the stove. Now I haven't bought my little thing to go with it, and that's taking a while to boil. Now if you want to make this a little bit more simply, you can skip what I'm doing here is I'm just going to boil the potatoes for just a couple of minutes. And what that does is it just softens them a little bit, speeds up the cooking time in the oven. But if you want to do it far more simply, you can stick those potatoes straight into your dish. It just will take a little bit longer to cook in the oven. Yeah. So, you know, I'm just showing you what to do. I won't get those boiling all the way today because in the interest of time, but I might just grab a wooden spoon. Can I grab a wooden spoon, please? Can I grab a wooden spoon? I think I had one there. Lovely, thank you so much. Now the key to cooking your onions, which I'm not going to follow through on today, is to don't be in a hurry. There's nothing worse than getting into a dish that's meant to be nice and soft and crunching into onion that hasn't been cooked properly. Okay, so the key thing is get your onions cooked. And as I said, if you're in a hurry, the tendency is to get this bit done fast. Now I'm going to add a little bit of salt to this. Again, it's salt just to taste. I'm using some pink Himalayan salt. Alright. I'm just going to add a teaspoon or two to this. Okay, so I'm using this because it's naturally occurring and it contains a lot of trace elements. Yeah, things that you won't get if you just, you know, if those of you who did science at school, you know, what is this? What is the things that make up salt? Sodium, basically, yeah. And so if you're just going to use that, then that's all you get. If you're using the naturally occurring salt, whether it's sea salt or the pink Himalayan salt, then you get all the trace elements as well. Okay. Now I'm going to pretend for today's exercise that these potatoes have now boiled and I've let them boil for a couple of minutes. Okay, you don't want them too soft because then they'll break up in your dish, and you don't want them, you know, rock solid because there's no point in doing it that way either. Okay, so I'm going to pass those through to the kitchen. Folks, can I get someone to drain these potatoes, please? Thank you. Just drain them and bring them back. I'll just close that in case he drops them. All right. So these are starting to go clear, and you can tell your onions are cooked when they get that clear look to them. Sort of translucent is probably the right word. Now, as soon as I get those potatoes back, what I'm going to do is layer them in the bottom of this dish. Now this dish is quite a deep one, doesn't have to be this deep, but the idea is you simply put your potatoes in, a little bit of onion, and then you sprinkle some of this here on top. Now this is Massels Chicken Stock powder. Yeah, it's plant-based, it has no chicken in it. Okay, so some of you who like chicken will feel ripped off, but not when you taste this. Okay, when you taste this, you'll be suitably impressed. I'll just keep that on there. Okay, give that a wee stir, they're just about right. Turn that off. Okay, now I'm going to do it the quick way today, so don't laugh if I drop them. Okay, so I'm just going to put a layer in the bottom, just a few like that. Get them all sort of laid out flat. Then I'm going to put a little bit of this Massels Chicken Stock. Now, if you don't want to use something like this, you can mix up your own. If you go to somewhere like Bin In, you can get onion powder and garlic powder, a little bit of turmeric, and you can sort of mix all those together. But I just find this a convenient way to keep them all in the one place. Alright, I think that's about done. I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to put a little bit of this on top. back. I can put some more onions, more potatoes on. Just use a good old finger for that. A little bit of salt. Again, it's just a taste. A little bit more of this. This will all mix through. And then, a few more onions. It's just called layering. I'm not doing it too accurately. If you like to make your dishes look all pretty, which some people like to do, then you can take this last bit of potato and you can put that out neatly on top so it all looks like it's neatly arranged. Personally, I'm not really into that because I always feel that somebody's touched it a lot. Okay, so I don't usually do that, but some people like to do it that way, and that's fine. Okay, and then I'm just going to put the rest of those on top like that. Get that out of there, it's a bit hot. Okay, and I can just put those like this. Now, a little bit more salt just for the top layer. Again, if you don't want to have too much salt. And remembering, of course, that the Massels Chicken Stock has a little bit of salt in it already. Okay, so don't want to overdo it. Right, here I've got about 2/3 to 3/4 of a tin of coconut cream. So I'm just going to tip that over here like this, just evenly over the top. And I've used a clear dish here so that you can sort of see it filling up a bit in the bottom. You want to tip it over until you can sort of just see it peeking through about 1/3 of the way. There you go, I can use the whole thing there, that'll be fine. It will bake down a bit. Now, what you would probably do now is you'd grate a big pile of cheese on top. Yeah, is that right? That's probably what you would do. Now, you can get vegan cheese from the supermarket, which does melt down quite nicely. But what I'm going to use today is turmeric. Okay, now the oil and the coconut cream will form a nice glaze on the top of that. And so this will stick quite nicely. And I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit on top. And you'll see when the other ones come out of the oven, because I've cooked some out the back, that it has a nice golden brown look on the top of it. Okay, so you don't want to go too heavy on this because turmeric has its own flavour to it, but it does give it a nice glazed look on the top. Okay, and that's probably about right. Okay. Now I would put that in the oven. You don't want it on a very high heat because if you boil the coconut cream on too high a heat, it tends to separate and go a bit oily. So I've said about 175, and depending on how long you've cooked your potatoes, I've said about 30 to 40 minutes maybe, just until it gets a nice brown look on the top. Your potatoes will be cooked through. If you didn't parboil your potatoes, you'd definitely use the whole 45 minutes in the oven. Okay, and that's all there is to it. It's pretty simple, wouldn't you say? Yeah, few ingredients. Anyone could make that at home. It's a really nice dish to serve with something like peas. Peas go really well with it. Salad, yep. Really nice dish. You'll get to try some today. So I've made some already today, so you'll get to taste those.